Hey guys, what is up? You guys, my name is eManDan64, and um, you know, so a couple of years ago, this eManDan64 too, he put out this little Modest Mouse album ranking. So since in the spirit, since they put out a new album, figured, might as well do a little review for the new album. While 64-2 is out, I'll take over for him for the time being. This is the new album. I honestly wasn't too excited for this album leading up to it. I think Modest Mouse is a band long past their prime, unfortunately. I love their old 90s indie emo rock that was that raw, angsty sound that is so of its time with the changing world with technology. That being said, it all holds up phenomenally well with technology becoming more prevalent and more consuming. Looking back, I kind of like the band's 2000s material less than I did before. I enjoy Good News and We Were Dead, but aside from a few tracks on each of those that I admittedly love, like The World at Large and Float On off of Good News, and March into the Sea and Parting of the Sensory off of We Were Dead, the rest of those albums haven't really stuck with me nearly as much as everything prior. I still think it's overall good material, but it's evident that the band has been declining ever since. The modern releases since then have been much more sporadic, but not very good at all. Strangers to Ourselves is so watered down and boring. The Golden Casket is straight up bad, and one of the worst albums by a band that I love. Listening to the singles for this album, I had mixed feelings. Look How Far was the first, and it was alright. It had an edge that reminded me kind of The Fruit That Ate Itself. That is a good EP, but for the 90s Modest Mouse, it is one of the weakest releases of the era. Otherwise, Look How Far is a solid track, but nothing great. I like the lyrics. Isaac has often been blunt with lyrics, but this doesn't have much depth. The second single was Pickin' Dragon's Pockets, and this one has grown on me a little bit. I did not like it at all at first, but it's not too bad. It's basically the sound of The Golden Casket if it wasn't terrible. It has a more electronic neo-psychedelia sound that is much more nuanced. It's an alright track that is pretty fun and energetic. I like Isaac's vocals. He is much more into it than previous songs. The third single, Third Side of the Moon, is easily the best single and the best song off the album. It's a much more emotional and deeper song. Isaac sings not about himself or the world, but about someone who has passed on. It's an emotional and meaningful song. I like the individual pieces of the song, the lyrics, the more somber instrumental, but as a whole I feel the song could have been better. The instrumental is good, but it doesn't quite go as far as maybe I would have liked. In the vein of old songs sort of pushing that instrumental as far as it can go towards the end, it seems too clean, which isn't a new issue, but for such an emotional song, I kind of want something more raw. When it came to the album as a whole, I'm glad to say it wasn't bad, but I still think it's the worst thing they've done, other than those two previous albums. It's maybe comparable to Sad Sappy Sucker, but that album is weird and really hard to compare to anything. The album has different sounds, and I commend it for that. It is still an indie rock album, but it is much more of that neo-psychedelia that was much more prevalent on the Golden Casket. These different sounds are cool, but they're often not fully realized and comes off unfocused. Remember Yourself is a good acoustic ballad that sets up a more emotional and vulnerable side of the album. The folk sound is not too out there and sounds at home for the band. I like Isaac's lyrics a lot, some of the best here. Life's a Dream is a much more out there sound, fully delving into that neo-psychedelia sound with post-punk elements. It's another solid track. I like the instrumental. The guitar riff is neat. It's one of the more unique tracks and it works. Dog Bed in Heaven is another folk track. This song doesn't quite work as well as Remember Yourself. At this point, the shifting genres is getting a bit too much. It's a slower, more stripped back track. It's kind of neat how it transitions into the second half of the song, Give It a Skeleton. This is sonically pretty similar, but now with electronic guitar and drums. I don't really get this. I think this part of the song is much weaker than the first and feels kind of pointless. Dog Bed in Heaven is already a decent track, and it would have been much better if it was just that first part and if it was shorter. There are also a few interludes here which I don't see the point in. This album already has a lot of tracks and many of them are pretty short. It's awkward and not implemented well into the album. I Can't Talk Right Now is this dreamy psychedelic track. I don't quite care for the beginning, but I like the guitar riff when the instrumental picks up. The rest of the track feels kind of boring and watered down, and especially weird with the grounded folk tracks. Speak and Spell is a more straightforward indie rock track. There are some really fun guitar licks, but it's an alright song to me. I don't really like the chorus at all. Rotten Fruit has really weird and out-of-place electronic elements. It's definitely the weirdest implementation of foreign sounds for the band. It clashes with the rest of the album, even more than other tracks. Knocked Down by Waves feels like a really pointless track. It's an alright folk track that doesn't really go anywhere, and it's only a minute long. Modest Mouse has a lot of really interesting short tracks like Wild Pack of Family Dogs and Might, but those tracks are fun and worthwhile. The difference from this track into the next track, Absolutely Necessary Nothing, is the most jarring. I really don't think the folk tracks and the psychedelia tracks mesh well here at all. This song is super boring too, with nothing really striking out about it. Song About Nothing is, just as the title says, a pretty nothing song. It's an interesting sounding dance punk track, but it's really kind of pointless and weird. It's kind of catchy, but not really worth much. Stoner Party is the second 30-second interlude, and it's really weird, and I don't get why it's here. It's pretty stupid, especially coming from 50-year-olds. The closer, Impossible Sundays, is alright. It's more boring than anything. The instrumental is good at times, but it's a largely forgettable track. It's another relatively straightforward indie rock track, but after getting genre whiplash, this doesn't really do much. This is an overall not bad album. The singles were good, and there were good elements here and there. The album fell through in the second half, but it had some really strong songs in the first half. Maybe the tracks would fare better on their own or in different projects due to clashing sounds, but whatever. I'm giving An Eraser and a Maze a 6 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, this album was fine. It was alright. You know, it's better than the previous two albums, but, you know. In going through the 64.2 files, there is a draft for, it's like a whole script ranking for Modest Mouse's, like, extra, like, their EPs, their one live album, and other whatever projects. So, that, 64.2 has been sitting on for at least, like, a year or two, honestly. So, fuck it. I'll just put that out. I'll do it for him since, while he's out, while I'm taking over the channel. Modest Mouse. Modest Mouse. Modest.